Hello, this is Brian P., and welcome to Scaling the Well. So, I had planned to do another podcast today, but during this last week, I have gotten some feedback, a lot of feedback actually, on the podcast I did on dating. And a lot of that feedback was from women. And they found it interesting, so the criticism wasn't too harsh. But I think they thought that I was kind of favoring the men somehow, and I thought I was pretty equal when I did the podcast. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do one that's a little more clear and aimed strictly at women. And in the future, if I might do one aimed strictly at men, so we can kind of break down a few topics and a few theories I have, and we'll see how that goes. So, first of all, the flip. I talked about that in my first dating podcast, and I'll go over it again a little bit. So the flip is something that I believe happens at age, at least in current history, current times, present time, however you want to call it, at about age 35 for men and women. And just in a nutshell, it's basically when the power dynamic kind of shifts. So when we're in our teens and 20s, at least the perception is that women have a lot of the power when it comes to dating and relationships. Why is that? Well, there's a lot of reasons. We're a superficial society. Women are younger and attractive, and men are young, and they don't have as much money in their teens and 20s. So they're constantly chasing women. And women have the right of rejection. They have the veto, right, like the president. And so men kind of feel that, I'm the one doing all the chasing, and let's say you're just an average guy, you're not extremely good looking or whatever. It could be a lot of work getting a girl. Whether you just want to hook up, whether you want a relationship, it could be a chore. It's a trying thing. And not everyone's a player. I know a lot of women who have been burnt or whatever think that most men are players. Honestly, that's a small percentage of men that happen to approach a very large percentage of women. The average man is not a player. The average man is happy to get like one phone number if he goes out for the night, or if he goes to a party, and a girl talks to him for more than 5 minutes. Even if nothing happens after that, he kind of considers that a successful night. That's your average guy. Seriously. Now, those average guys are often ignored because, there's the old cliche how girls like the bad boys and stuff. I don't think that's always true, but I do think, and we'll get into this a little bit later, that some of the things that women are attracted to, and this is for men too, but the things that we're attracted to when we're younger, we're not necessarily attracted to when we're a little older and have a little more experience and worldliness under our belts. So, yes, sometimes, we're a lot more superficial when we're younger, and then hopefully we grow out of some of that. And then at age 35, the flip happens, and the flip happens for, and it's not exactly age 35. That's something I just kind of came up with through observations. It's not scientific, but I think if you look in your own lives, you'll kind of see it. Or if you're not 35 yet, talk to some of your older siblings or older friends. And if you're over 35, look back and kind of see what happened, And the flip in power kind of happens for a number of reasons. Some of those reasons are societal. So if you're a woman who, chased some guy, or maybe not chased some guy, you just were in a relationship or whatever. And I see this a lot too. Doesn't necessarily have to be marriage. You could be in a long-term relationship, and then it just ended up not going anywhere. And you started that relationship maybe when you were college, or at least college age, your early to mid-20s, and then it turns out that he really doesn't want to settle down with you. Like you were cool. He's your friend. And really, that's the true friend zone, right? So we say that women put men in the friend zone. Well, when women get put in the friend zone, it could be for a decade. so again, I said it in my last podcast. I would not trade places with a woman. I said it. It was controversial. As an African American man, I would not trade places with the richest white woman in this country because I don't want to deal with what even the most powerful and richest woman has to deal with in life. I'd rather be, you know, suffer the indignities any indignities that I have to suffer more than theirs. I don't want to trade places. But yeah, you know, when guys complain about being put in the friend zone, it's usually like, oh, I like a girl. Oh, she just wants to be friends. And then usually they're upset because they're still hanging out with her. They still like her, hoping that she'll changes her mind. And this is more going into the podcast. I probably am being more and more convincing myself that I need to do for men. But when a woman gets put in the friend zone, it's totally different. It's like she's in a relationship. Everything starts out great. They might even cohabitate, you know, live together. And she thinks that, you know, their families know each other. Everybody knows each other. And then, like, you know, 5, 10 years later, it's kind of like, didn't work out. And then the guy's kind of interested in other people now. It's not necessarily, again, because he's a bad guy. It's just that, well, we met when we were 21 and now, you know, I'm 30 and it's not good, you know. Sometimes it's shorter than that, you know. It could be a high school sweetheart and then they go to college and then, ooh, you know, I didn't know that there were these other flavors of ice cream around. And he starts getting into that mode. And now they turn into friends and he wants to be friends. And she's like, I invested years in you. How dare you, you know? So again, I would rather have the male version of the friend zone than the female version of the friend zone. That's going to cost me a decade of my life. But that's a little bit of a tangent. So the flip, you know, somebody's in a relationship, let's say female gets out of it. Now she's older and she has a whole different perspective on life, you know. She's more cautious. She's not so braggadocious, you know, because now she's in her late 20s, early 30s. You know, and when she gets closer to 35, you know, for one, she sees those young, you know, 20-something girls, you know, who don't care. They just want to date like their superficial guy, and that guy could be her age, and he just has a BMW and a good job, and you know, it could be kind of depressing for some women, and we're getting to that too about confidence and everything. It could be she could have gone through a divorce and she has a kid, you know, and again, we're a superficial society, so like a single mother with a child, unfortunately, it's not looked at as being a greater catch as a woman without a child who's never been married, and I don't think that's necessarily fair. You know, I can understand somebody not wanting to date a single mom for the simple fact that they're not ready for the responsibility, you know, and if you're not ready for that responsibility, I have seen a lot of people who want to hook up with single moms and act like they're ready for that type of responsibility when they're just kind of lying about it. Let's just call it lying because that's what it is. And then, you know, they go through another bad breakup or whatever. And then there's a kid involved, so that makes it worse. And so I think women just start looking around like, am I ever going to find the right one? And again, I don't believe in that there's such thing as a right one, but, you know, we could talk about that later as well. So, and then for the men, you know, the average guy who was kind of just being a pest at the bar or at the party, or the guy who was kind of giving you googly eyes, you know, when you were in study hall or whatever. Well, now he's in his career. You know, he has a little bit of money. He's independent. He's no longer living with roommates or his mother. He has a job, and you know, that's the type of person now you realize you're attracted to. Even though you weren't attracted to him then, his potential has finally come about, and yeah, you know, he's looking pretty good now. And now he has multiple women chasing him, where back in his 20s, he was chasing multiple women who weren't interested. So that's why I call it the flip. It's not necessarily something that any individual does. It's just kind of a play that society kind of plays on us, and usually women consider themselves, you know, the victims of this. So there's that, and a lot of women wanted me to go talk about that, like how can they avoid the flip? Well, I don't think it's something you avoid. Again, it's societal. So there's that. So advice for women. So let me start and I'm going to say something else controversial, and a lot of women might disagree. I think historically, if you watch movies, if you listen to talk shows or whatever, they're always talking about the male ego, the male ego. Well, the male ego is huge, right? well, let me put it this way, and I need to correct myself because this is my whole point, and I think I just stepped on it. The male ego is delicate. The female ego is huge. The female ego, whether or not, they had good upbringings or bad upbringings, let's go on Facebook and see how many of them refer to themselves as queens and they need to be treated like this or like that, and they're constantly disappointed. And the reason people are disappointed is because, well, something didn't live up to their expectations. Well, that means you had expectations. Men don't have a lot of expectations. We don't, most of us don't, and again, I'm making vast generalizations, and that's what podcasts are for, correct? Right. So, but yeah, it's men get their feelings hurt easily, and, it's like, oh my God, she disrespected me, or, oh, this, I can't believe she did this or she did that. Yeah. We can get really sensitive. But women actually have way more and higher expectations than men. That's what I mean by they have huge egos. I go back to my Dungeons and Dragons analogy. Again, I'm a nerd. Sorry, I bring it up. If you're a second level thief, why do you think you deserve a 30th level fighter? And that's kind of how women think. They don't care where they are in life. They think they deserve a man that has a lot. If women at Target think they deserve to, have an investment banker for some reason. And I'm not saying all women think that way, but it seems to be true, and in some ways that benefits men because men are not stigmatized for dating down, right? If I remember one time, I was in a professional job and I dated somebody who was a clerical staff, basically secretarial level. And, she was cute and nobody, cared. Nobody batted an eye. Now, if a woman was in my position and I was in clerical and they dated me, a lot of people would be like, hey, what's going on with that? All her friends would be like, why are you putting up with that? He makes half as much as you, So I'm not saying that this is all women's fault. Society, again, we're very superficial and we have our gender roles. A lot of that's changing with the new generations, with the millennials and generation, what is it, Z? Yeah, they're probably not going to be the same as, I'm an Xer, and definitely not going to be the same as the baby boomers, but that's out there, and so I don't blame women for that, but they have to be aware that when you have those expectations, it's like gambling, you're going to lose a majority of the time when you take those high risk bets because you're not going to get that. So, those bets shouldn't be placed nearly as much. So, okay. So that's the female ego. So just some little tidbits. So let's talk about women in their 20s. The one thing I would say, don't follow a man. And what do I mean by that? Don't chase anybody, don't, and I know that's kind of like common sense, like you shouldn't chase a man, but there's women who move, a guy gets a job in a certain place and they'll move their entire life, leave their support system. And again, former social worker, support systems are huge. If you have a good support system consisting of family, friends, both, you shouldn't give that up easily. That is priceless. And I'm going to do a podcast on networking versus in-working. And basically just a little preview. In-working is basically strengthening the relationships you already have, whereas networking is going out and developing new relationships. You will get more job opportunities. You will find more even dating opportunities. You will find more financial opportunities through in-working than through networking. And I know that's kind of against, the grain of common business practice, but how many business cards you're going to get, versus the relationships you already have that are already there that you've neglected, and that can do wonderful things in your life, and you can do wonderful things for them in turn. So that's just a preview of a future podcast. But you don't leave a support system, a support network, and at least not easily. Now, if you were married with children, so if you marry somebody, let's say you marry a guy who's in the military and you're in your 20s, you have a kid and he gets stationed in, like, you live in Arizona and he gets stationed overseas, or he gets stationed in another state. Okay, that's reasonable, right? Because you're already committed to each other. You have a child, and that makes sense. Okay, yeah, you'll probably move. You're not going to get divorced, over that. But I see people, and most of the time it's women. A guy gets a freaking job. It's not even a really good job, and they will pack up and leave with this guy because they don't want to break up with him. And the relationship might only be a year or two old, maybe not even that, maybe 6 months. And they go off and they do this, and I'm just like, why? Why would you do that? Because if you guys break up in Idaho and you're from San Diego, what's your support system there? Who's going to be there when he's not there? You're putting all your eggs in one basket, and that basket has a hole in it. So that's the one thing I would say for women in their 20s, don't do that. I'm trying to be more succinct and give actual advice instead of just theories. So if you want me to give advice, that's one thing. Don't do that. Don't try to trap a man, which is the opposite or kind of goes along with following him. Trapping them where you are, and the old version of trapping a man is getting pregnant or something. But I don't think most modern women in this age do that. I hope not. Try to get pregnant on purpose just to keep a man. That's going to ruin not one, not two, but 3 lives. But what I mean mostly is emotionally trap him or put him in situations, where it's kind of a forced commitment. You're worried he's going to leave, or he might not be interested. So you introduce him to your parents right away. You want him to meet your friends right away. When you might have only been dating a few weeks. Don't do that, because if he's not ready and he doesn't want the commitment, then that's not going to be good for you in the long run. So even if for some reason that worked, basically you're setting yourself up for failure. Because eventually, that's a lot of the times that those relationships I told you about, the female friend zone, where you're in a relationship and 8-9 years later, he's kind of like, not interested. What really happens is that you kind of intimidated him into a relationship that he wasn't sure about, and he got older, and he's finally saying, now I have the courage to tell you I'm not interested. and then where does that leave you? So, that's the second thing for women in their 20s. The third thing for women in their 20s is that you need to have the insight to recognize that the things that you want now are not necessarily going to be the things that you want later. And if that's the only thing you get from this podcast, that's it. If you're in your 20s. Now, women in their 30s. Because when I talk about women, I'm only breaking this into 2 groups: women in their 20s and their 30s, because those are the 2 groups that are in the dating pool for the majority of the time as far as setting up their lives. Now, there's women in their 40s, 50s who are typically back in the dating pool because they're divorced, or they're widowed, or whatever the situation may be, and those are different circumstances. They have a lot of wisdom for the most part. They might need advices here and there. I'm a married man in his 40s, so I don't feel that I'm qualified to talk about that. Maybe once I get a divorce, I'll talk about it. I'm just joking. My wife is going to listen to this and beat me. No, I'm just joking again. We have a very loving relationship. But no, I try to speak on things that I've observed and things that I've seen and using my own, educational background and I can even say work experience, being a social worker and, but yeah, that's a whole nother thing. And I might even bring in a guest to talk about, people who are dating in their, 40s, 50s. So women in their 30s. And I'm going to come back to this again. Be confident. And here's the thing. and this is not just with dating. This is not just for women. And I'm going to bring this theme up in another podcast. And it's something that someone else told me. Confidence, believe it or not, is more than just a state of mind. It's a choice. So if you're, whether it's taking a test or going after a certain person or going after a particular job or whatever, or just doing well in any endeavor, confidence is a choice. It's not a state of mind. It's not something that's just going to come about. Because if that's the case, then everybody would be confident, right? You could say, well, it takes, some people suffer trauma. Some people do this. Some people, don't have these skills or that skills. If you have confidence, basically what you're saying is I'll figure it out. That's what it is. When I first was in HR, my boss had a saying, figure it out. And I used to kind of get not angry at that, but annoyed. It's kind of like, dude, I'm just learning here. Why? But what he was really saying is that, I hired you. I have faith in you. I have faith in your skills and intelligence that when I give you a task, you can figure it out. Which, by the way, is the difference between a management level position and a professional level position. If you're just a professional, you have some autonomy. It's higher than a technical level position, but you still have a lot of guidance. When you're in management, you're expected to figure things out. And in life, you're the manager of your own life. And so you're going to have to figure things out. You're not going to get your hand held for every situation. You're not going to have a mentor for every single situation. And if you have good mentors in your life, and I encourage people to find mentors, what you should get from that mentor is not just dot points on what to do in every situation. What you should get is more of an overriding philosophy of like, you know what, this is how I approach these type of situations. And overall, because I have philosophies on how to approach situations, I can figure it out. And so that's going to bring about confidence. And when you have that confidence, the things that a lot of women face, a lot of men face too, but we're talking particularly about women in this podcast. Those things are going to not be as cumbersome. So let's go to the second point, and then we'll come back to confidence. The second point is, and this is for everyone, and this is another thing that I'm going to bring up in other podcasts. Don't seek happiness. Nah, that sounds like I'm anti-American, right? The pursuit of happiness is that's not one of our oldest sayings. Well, happiness is a byproduct. It is not a goal. So when you are happy, it is because of good work that you have done. So if you finished a project that you had your mind set on completing, or maybe it was assigned to you, you're happy. When you finish paying off your student loans, you're happy. When you buy a house, you're happy. Getting married is happiness, but what of all the work it took dating that particular person, doing all the things, and let's say you knew that person for 2 years and then you got married. Well, there was a lot of things, and I could go back to the 4 disciplines of execution about the lead measures and the leg measures. What lead measures led up to that wedding day? The wedding day was fun. The happiness was all the things you came to get there, if that makes sense. And that goes for anything. So when you're not seeking happiness, you're not going to seek a man to make you happy. Does that make sense? And when you're not seeking a man to make you happy, when you're putting in good work, so whatever you're doing, you have a career, or you have a plan to get a career. Maybe you're starting late, and maybe you decided to go back to nursing school. That's very misogynistic, right? Or chauvinistic, I should say. So let's say you're going to get your accounting degree, or you're going to be, or whatever you want to do. And you're in your 30s now. And a lot of people finish these type of things in their 20s. It doesn't matter. I didn't get my MBA till I was 41. So go back and you complete that, and you're going to be happy. And at graduation, again, it's like a wedding. You're not happy that you're graduating. All the work that led up to the graduation day is what is going to yield happiness. And then you put your effort into the career, or it could be a business. Maybe you have always wanted to start a business. I'm gonna try not to be chauvinistic again. You're not going to start a cupcake business. You're gonna start an online service that repairs phones. I don't know. You could see me struggling coming up with something off the top of my head. Whatever the business is, but you're going to take joy in the fact that you've actually completed it. My sister owns a boutique. Again, I was as her brother, I was afraid when she first said she was going to start it, but I was inspired by the confidence that she would figure it out, even though she never owned a store before. She figured it out. Still up and going. It's called Black Boutique. It's in El Dorado Hills. Please stop by. Free plug there. But it's inspiring when people do things and they set a goal and they accomplish them. And so once you start accomplishing and knocking down these goals, wow, how attractive are you going to be? And I said that about men in the last podcast, but this is true for women. Happiness is very attractive. You can't seek it, though. I know it's so tricky, right? You can't seek happiness, but a happy person is. So let's be superficial for a second. A woman who is a 6 on the on the attractive scale physically, or this could be a man too. It could be a man, but I'm talking to women right now. Let's say you think you're a 6. You're a little bit. Average would be what, a 5.55 or whatever. So you're a 6. You're there's nothing super hot about you in your mind or whatever, but you're a business owner, or you're doing well in your career, or you wrote a book, or whatever it is. That's attractive. Not because you have money or whatever. You might not have money. I know people who've written books that aren't rich, and I know people who have businesses that aren't, super wealthy. But it's like that drive is attractive to all human beings, and there's a lot of men out there, again, who are true misogynists, and they would say, oh, no, that's not a woman's place. Who cares about them? They're over there dying because they're probably old. And if they're young, wow, that's just pathetic. So knock down those goals, knock down those walls, do well in the other areas of your life. And then that other one area of having a relationship will kind of fall into place, in my opinion, because you're going to be a shining star. So that's the one thing. Don't seek happiness, and then take pride in your age. And a lot of, I'm going to get back, well, with women, it's different. They want to have children, there's a clock ticking. Well, guess what? If you're desperate, that clock ticks a lot faster, and it seems a lot farther away. So going back to the second thing I said is don't seek happiness, but start becoming happy by completing your goals. When you start completing your goals, see, all these things feed into each other. You're confident. You being able to figure it out means you're going to be able to complete your goals. You completing your goals is going to make you happy. You being happy is going to make it so you take pride in who you are. It doesn't matter if you're 35, 36, 37. You are going to be a confident, happy person, and then Mr. Right will come along. And the cool thing about it is that there's always these lead measures to these goals, right? So you're going to be happy. It's not going to, if you're in college again, or you're getting your master's, or you're starting your business, you opening the doors to your business, or your grand opening online or whatever, or you graduating, those are just another milestones. Those are just other lead measures. Those are just check marks. You're going to be happy along the way because there's a lot of little goals that you're going to be knocking down on the way to those things. And in each little goal that gets knocked down, the happier you're going to be. And so it's not like, oh, I graduated college and here comes a man. That man might come way before you graduate. That man might come in your second semester because you're actually doing stuff with your life. And so it alleviates desperation when you're focused on things that you have figured out. You figured it out. Now you're doing it. And then you become happy, or at least the happiness is flowing through you. And then that clock ticking starts to become slower because now you do find somebody, and that relationship is going to be more solid because he's not going to just be attracted to you because you're 20 and hot. He's going to be attracted to you because you're about your business and you're handling stuff. And there's nothing more attractive than that, man or woman. So, and in the end, you'll live happily ever after. Just kidding. I don't believe in happily ever after. It takes work. Once you get in a relationship, that doesn't bring you happiness. And that's kind of the point of it. Continued work. And once you're in a relationship, you should still have goals. And that's what keeps the relationship alive and thriving. So that's my advice for women. Hopefully this seems a little more balanced than the last one. I don't think I got hate feedback, but they were just kind of like, come on, talk a little bit more about women. Look, I believe in women, I don't think the world could survive without women, I have a theory. Maybe I'll just put it out here real quick, and hopefully this doesn't ruin the rest of the podcast, but when women, there's always this thing that women are hysterical or more irrational than men, and, coming from like the Mad Men, 1950s type era. And here's the thing. Everything that men worship, as far as archetypes, David versus Goliath, 300 Spartans, held off the Persian army. When the War of Independence, for this country, the reason why men admire those things and we talk about those things is because it's always about a man or a group of men facing unbelievable odds and winning. Well, that's not a very masculine trait. That's an irrational trait. That's a female trait, saying that I am going to beat the odds no matter what. I don't care what you say. I'm going to do this, right? And how many men roll their eyes when their wives or girlfriends say that to them? But that's a female trait, is saying, I don't care about the quantifiable numbers. We're going to do this anyway. And when we worship those when it comes to stories and in movies and whatever, even biblical texts. But when women act that way, we're like, yeah. So, but let's face it, when I was a CWS worker, and they get a big case. You can have a woman who may have been traumatized in her childhood, and now she has at least one child, maybe more. And then she might be addicted to drugs, or she might be a victim of domestic violence. And then on top of that, we remove her kids. And then on top of that, you want to get your kids back. We give you this case plan that's like 5 pages long. These are the things you have to do every single day in order to get your kids back. And guess what? I'm going to be checking in on you. And if you test positive, or if you're seeing that guy again against the restraining order, these are all things that are going to set you back, and they might actually destroy your chances of seeing your kid again. And if you don't reunify, we're going to adopt your kids, possibly to strangers or to your sister that you never got along with. So, and a lot of times these cases, both the mother and the father in this picture, the fathers kind of check out like, that's too much, man. I can't hang. But 80% of kids get reunified, usually with the mom, because the mom, who comes from even the backgrounds that I just mentioned, will do that. I'm a college-educated, master's degree level man. I've had businesses. I've had a lot of success in my life. I have a lot of happiness, and I've accomplished a lot of my goals. And I can tell you that some of the greatest inspiration that I've ever gotten were from some of my female clients when I was a CPS social worker. So I'll just end this podcast. If you are somebody who is if you're misogynistic but you still worship these stories of overcoming great odds, you're acting like a bitch, and be proud of it. This is Brian P. I'll talk to you next time.